What would today's 50-plus-year-old Raúl say to the 21-year-old Raúl, not knowing then what was to come, but watching it all today as it's happened?
That's a good question. I would say stick with it. I would say that there's no one way to do this. I would say everybody has their own path. And I would also say be entirely yourself. Don't worry about being anybody else. I think that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned as an actor. And I would tell him to stay true to himself. So much of the beginning of his career was being told that he was not, Cuban enough or American enough or white enough or brown enough or whatever. It was always be somebody else, and that is bullshit. I think we can only become great at what we do, not to say that I'm great, but we can only become great at what we do if we figure out how to be entirely ourselves. And I don't think you really know how to do that at 21. So I'd say stick with it, kid.
Love it. So, actually, I'm going to switch orders again because you talked about not Cuban enough, not this enough, not that enough. And of course, you played magnificently Che in a revival of Evita. And you and I have talked about, if you have not heard my interview with Raúl on WGNradio.com, check that out. It literally got thousands of views.
I'm so happy.
On the first day
that was my
that
mom.
it was
It's
up.
all my mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Applause for his mom and dad, by the way, who are right over there.
Mom and dad are here. They're very sentimental about Chicago, as I obviously am too.
So this is for Mom and Dad, and my question for you, because we talked about Evita some, and Mandy Patinkin originated the role, and other people play it, and you surprised me when you talked about it, so I wanted to revisit it here, because you didn't just step in, here you go, Raúl, we need you to play Che. You have your background coming from Cuba, your parents coming from Cuba and all that. That influenced your interpretation of that role, and talk about that.
Yeah, I wanted Che to be kind of an unreliable narrator. That's one of the things you and I talked about. I think that it's an interesting musical because Evita is not just a biography of Eva Perón. That's why that movie makes no sense. If you try to make a film that just celebrates Evita, whatever, it's actually a musical about the ways that surface imagery influences politics. It's a political story, and it's also a cautionary tale about power and money and surface glitter and glamour being much more seductive than the political reality that it represents, And as a matter of fact, whenever we talk about Trump lately, I always think he reminds me of Perón. It's the similar kind of political, I am a populist, but I am actually an incredibly rich and well-connected man underneath. So it was important to me to play Che as part of that glitter and glamour. The surface of Che Guevara is the extraordinary idealistic rebel. The reality is he became a killer, a serious killer. And I was curious about whether I could play that in Evita as the narrator of the show and make the audience trust me. And then at the end make them wonder if they'd made the wrong decision. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I have
but you were a bit, when you took that role, I mean, today, the Raúl of today may say, I have some demands about how I do this role. That was earlier in your career, and yet you let them know how you plan to play that role.
Yeah, I did. I told them what I was going to do with it. I also said that I certainly couldn't repeat what Mandy had done. I wasn't really interested. Look, I came from Chicago. We don't repeat anything here. Everybody gets up on stage and rolls up their sleeves. And, I always say that Steppenwolf is the theater that taught me that you could throw stuff at the wall. If it sticks, great. If it doesn't, try again tomorrow. Like, that's just part of the deal here is you're not precious about the work, and you're certainly not trying to make a museum piece. So I came into rehearsals thinking that's what they wanted. They were all very like, you're a Chicago actor. It's going to be really gritty. And then they'd tell me to do exactly what Mandy had done, and I said, I'm not interested in this. I didn't know any better. I didn't know you weren't allowed to do that. I didn't know that. Whatever. You know what? I just always have stood up for myself. And
you had support in doing that.
And I had support in doing that. I had that support from, the team that hired me for the show was extraordinary. A lot of them had worked on the original production. Larry Fuller, the choreographer who was restaging the show. And then in the end, the brief version of it is that I actually thought I should quit the show because I wasn't we just didn't mesh at all, the way they were staging it. And so I think I said this story that at one point they kept telling me to go upstage and like lift my arms. And I said, why? And they're like, well, Mandy did it. And I was like, so? And then they're like, you go like this. And I said, what am I doing? They're like, you're summoning the set. Okay. And actually, when I did it sometimes, there was a huge flag that would come down, and sometimes I was like, fine, I'll go up there and summon the set. And I remember one time like doing this, and then the flag, instead of coming down, it just sort of fell onto the floor. And I kind of did this. Anyway, so I was having such a hard time, and then Judy Prince, Hal's wife, came to see the show, one of the rehearsals at 890 Broadway, and she saw how I was struggling with the creatives, and she told Hal, hey, that young man you hired to play Che is having a hard time. Go over there and support him because he's extraordinary. And then Hal came in and watched the run-through, and then he said, let Raúl do whatever he wants to do. So, bless you, Hal.
Yeah.
But it takes Hal Prince to be able to say that.
So the other thing I'm going to kind of take out of order here is to go to Chicago, because one of the things I began to notice as I watched our interview that was online, but that different people were pulling out of it and then posting on their own the Chicago discussion. And I told you when we first talked, Chicagoans love that you spent so much time here. So I wanted to early on talk about that, because you had people sleeping on your floor that, well, they don't sleep on our floors.
I remember going to parties with Ora Jones in our place on Armitage and Sheffield, and I remember, I think I told you, I had a sixth-floor walk-up on 23rd and Lex in New York for $1,200 a month after I graduated from NYU. But my first apartment here on Armitage and Sheffield was $1,200 a month, which was a one-floor walk-up with 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, on a terrace, with a view of downtown, and I thought, why have I ever lived in New York City? This is incredible. And one of our roommates was Brian Darcy James, who was on the national tour of Les Mis at the time, and then of course Brian went on to do Titanic, and everybody was crazy proud
Didn't he
of him.
sleep on the floor? That's what.
No, I was the one who was sleeping on the floor. I think I bought like a plastic box, because I made like $100 a week, and then I had $100 per diem for the week, and I was living in Chicago on $200, and I was sleeping on a friend's floor up in Schaumburg. But Brian would come in and out, and Jill Lochnikar, and Jeff Max, and Michelle Duffy, the glorious, glorious Michelle Duffy, and that whole team of people that I ended up doing Grease with, and Jim Cordy, who choreographed that production. We would all just kind of roam in and out of each other's worlds. I mean, I wasn't even equity when I got my first job at the Goodman, Cry the Beloved Country with Frank Galati directing, probably the best director I've ever worked with in my life. And you didn't have to make much money, but you could have a really good life here. You really could, you know?
And you did.
We had an apartment in Old Town for $800 a month that we thought was way too expensive. It was a duplex with a fireplace, even.
I want to turn to Stephen Sondheim. We did not talk about this on the radio interview.
All right, here we go.
Tell us something. Look, everybody here, huge Sondheim fans. Porchlight has done some amazing Sondheim stuff. So tell us something we don't know about Stephen Sondheim.
He had one of the best laughs you'll ever hear. I think it's the thing I miss about him the most, is his laugh. I could pick him out anywhere in the house, whatever show I was doing.
People said, who had worked with him, he was intimidating. They would freak out when he would be watching them. Talk about your relationship with him, and does that sound accurate to you, or it's kind of like, nah, they don't know Sondheim?
He was intimidating, and I would freak out when he was watching me. There was a run-through of Company that we did because John Doyle, glorious, glorious director, would never sort of let us. We wouldn't really run the show. We would run it for character. He doesn't ever do run-throughs. You would do bits and pieces of the show. Say on Company, we did a run-through for the character of Joanne, and it would be everything that Joanne was in and everything that she sang. Everybody else could change their staging around her, but we would just do her scenes, and so on and so forth throughout the entire cast. We did every single role this way. When we got to New York, we finally did one for Bobby. We had never done the show for just Bobby, and as John said, darling, this could be a complete nightmare, or it could be brilliant. The whole run was me by myself, because Bobby is completely alone the whole show. And then he's drinking, we found out, for 2.5 hours straight, and getting stoned, and doing God knows what else. And then he has a nervous breakdown, and he leaves. And then all his friends show up. And that's actually what happens in Company. So we did this run where I'm completely alone. I could hear everybody, but I couldn't see them. And then we finish, and Steve had been watching this crazy run-through. And afterwards, he was old school. He'd take you aside if you're his star. You'd always get notes privately from Steve. And he was like, Raúl, when you finish being alive, just don't smile. It's sentimental, and I fucking hate it. And I was like, Okay. I won't smile, Steve, but performing for you is like performing for a dragon. And I'm just so fucking relieved that it's over that I smiled. But I will never do it again. I promise. I think also his sense of humor was pretty tremendous. And he gave us good. If you'd give as good as you got with him, he would always enjoy that. Look, we worked together off and on for 20 years, plus became friends. There were nights of games at his house and hanging out and telling stories and dinners together and working on the shows and thinking about what the shows meant and reimagining them. He was so open to entirely new interpretations of things that already worked. Of course he was tough. I think he is the greatest composer for musical theater we have ever had. I think there's Gershwin, I think there's Rodgers and Hammerstein, there's him. There's Shakespeare and there's Chekhov, there's him. And that's not an exaggeration. We have been so lucky to be alive at a time when someone on that level, a Shakespearean artist, created musical theater and reinvented the form in the last 50 years of the 20th century. So, of course he was intimidating and scary, but he was also a human being who laughed his ass off and who was thrilled by talent. And if he thought you were good, he might be incredibly tough on you, but he would also reward you so completely with this constant respect. I remember asking him one time when we were working on Merrily, and I was playing Charlie, and he had come into the dressing room and he would give me notes and notes and notes and notes. And I said, Steve, is any of this any good? Like, have I done anything right? And I had already played George for him. And he said, I can't answer that. But when I was 15, Oscar Hammerstein treated me like an equal. It's the only way I know how to show respect. And he said, but yes, you are very much what I was like at that age. And then he walked out of the dressing room.
Wow.
So you would always get back.
Did he understand? I mean, now he's larger than life. And I think he was for many years, but clearly now. And he was also very supportive of the modifications of Company, Reimagine, where Bobby became a woman, those kinds of things, or played as a female role. I'm curious, did he have a sense, was he grounded in his humanity, or did he have a sense that people saw him as larger than life?
I think he had a sense that people saw him as larger than life, but he didn't really carry that around with him. Look, he wasn't the easiest person to maneuver the world with, because there's a big difference between being famous and being a legend, and he was definitely legendary. I remember going to an event with a major movie star for a mutual friend, Richard Avedon, who was doing an exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and this woman that I was with is world-famous film star, and people would come running up to her, and Steve was part of our group. I had showed up with him, and the three of us were walking through, looking at Dick Avedon's work, and that's Richard Avedon. People would come running up to Richard to ask for autographs, people would come running up to her to ask for autographs, but whenever Steve would walk through the room, people would clear out of the way. I mean, that also might be New York, because New York is the only place where like someone is Stephen Sondheim standing in the room and everybody pretends they don't see him. Anywhere else on Earth, like they might be like, look who that is, and they'll come talk to him like a human being. I once saw Sting stand completely alone at the New York Film Festival. Everybody pretended Sting wasn't there. I'm like, anywhere else on Earth, this man would be mobbed, but in New York, none of us notice he's there.
We've spent all day celebrating your musical theater career, and while we have a moment, I just want to briefly get your take on the dramatic of what you've done, The Homecoming, Speed the Plow, and working with David Mamet.
David Mamet is the best.
Also here, right?
Also in Chicago.
Exactly. So out of curiosity, talk about, does Raúl Esparza come alive when the dramatic roles come along? I'm not going to even toss in the Law and Order stuff, that kind of thing, but where are you coming alive?
The plays are so much easier than musicals. Musicals are the hardest thing in the world to do. They are so brutally hard. I just finished doing a new one that we're looking at potentially for Broadway for next season out of town at Berkeley Rep, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot how difficult this is, to do 8 shows a week. Plays you can do if you have a cold. A musical you can't. I love doing plays. I love the experience because a musical is like a machine. You jump into it and then it takes you and you have to run on it. The cogs are spinning and the orchestra is going, and you cannot ultimately surf it. You have to just kind of go with it. but you can't control where the wave takes you. In a play, it's entirely about the other actors and the audience, and you can just kind of juggle together. So I love that the most. I really do.
The work you're talking about, and I know we're going to have to wrap up in a moment, but it's Galileo, which is, yeah, well, there you go. Written by Danny Strong. It's got a rock score. I've watched several clips from it, but fill us in. So you're right, Berkeley, whatever. Are we going to see it here? Broadway in Chicago, you're here. Pay
yeah,
attention.
I know. Maybe we should do it in Chicago. I actually told them that. I said, you want to do a real out-of-town tryout, take it to Chicago. We, because you guys had Death Becomes Her here, just which I hear is really great. Galileo is a new musical based on the life of Galileo, loosely based on the Brecht. But it's rock and roll, and it's set in the Renaissance, and it's really, really exciting. The score is thrilling. And we started a New York Stage and Film, and then we were out at Berkeley Rep with the glorious Joanna Felser guiding us out there, and Michael Mayer directing. And then it won't be this season, but we're looking at potentially 25, 26. You know, musicals also are very hard to develop. They take 5 to 10 years to get up on stage.
But that one's yours.
Yeah, this one's mine. Leap of Faith was mine too. We did that for 5 years, and that fell flat on its face. And then, or we did Taboo, which we all thought was extraordinary, and then it closed in a couple of months. You never know what's going to hit. But as I said earlier, you keep making the work. That's all we can do. Steve actually mentioned often that he would not have had the career he had if he had started now, because the new work doesn't get up as often, and you don't get afforded the big productions. But so what? You have to just keep trying. The doors have got, somebody has to open them, or we'll only end up with revivals of Phantom of the Opera for the rest of our lives. That is wonderful in its time. It's time to keep telling the stories that apply to us now. So.
You can enjoy more of my conversation with Raúl at WGNradio.com. We talk about lots of other things there. Thank you for the gift of your time.
Well, thank you.
Of having a meal with you. Raúl, thank you so much.
Thank you.